Lily stared at her phone in horror. The text message from her husband glowed on the screen. Mom just called, she's coming to stay with us for 2 weeks. Arriving tomorrow, love you. 2 weeks, 14 days, with her mother-in-law, in their tiny 2-bedroom apartment. Lily put her head in her hands and groaned. She had only met Diane twice before, once at their engagement party and once at the wedding 6 months ago. Both times the older woman had looked Lily up and down with those sharp blue eyes, the same color as her son's, but lacking the warmth that made James's gaze so comforting. It'll be fine, Lily muttered to herself as she looked around their apartment. The place was a mess. Papers from her graphic design projects covered the dining table. Dirty dishes filled the sink. The guest room, if you could call the tiny box with a futon a room, was currently serving as her makeshift office. She sent a quick text back to James. Great, can't wait. The 3 exclamation points and heart emoji hid her panic. The next morning Lily woke up early. She had stayed up until 2 a.m. cleaning, organizing, and trying to make their modest apartment look like the home of responsible adults, rather than 2 overworked 20-somethings who often ate cereal for dinner. Babe, relax, James said, wrapping his arms around her waist as she frantically wiped down the kitchen counter for the 3rd time. Mom's not coming to inspect the place. That's exactly what she's coming to do, Lily replied, only half joking. Your mother probably has white gloves in her purse to check for dust. James laughed and kissed her neck. She's going to love you. How could she not? The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Lily smoothed her dress and plastered on her brightest smile as James opened the door. Mom, he exclaimed, wrapping the petite woman in a bear hug. Diane stepped into their apartment, immaculately dressed in cream linen pants and a navy blouse that probably cost more than Lily's entire wardrobe. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a perfect chinman, not a strand out of place despite her morning flight. James, darling, she said, patting his cheek before turning her attention to Lily. And Lily, how lovely to see you again. Her smile didn't reach her eyes as she air-kissed Lily's cheeks. What a cozy place you have. In the next hour, Diane managed to comment on the small size of their kitchen. Oh, you make do with just these few cabinets? Their neighborhood, is it safe to walk alone at night here? And Lily's career choice, graphic design, how modern. Is there much money in that these days? By the time James left to pick up lunch, Lily was ready to hide in the bathroom. Let me help you set the table, Diane said, opening cabinets until she found their mismatched plates. She held up 2 different-sized dinner plates with a raised eyebrow. Eclectic. We're still building our collection, Lily explained, feeling her cheeks burn. Diane hummed, running a finger along the counter edge. When James's father and I were first married, we ate on paper plates for a year to save for a proper set of china. The implication was clear. Lily and James were doing marriage wrong. As they ate the takeout James had brought home, Diane asked pointed questions about their plans for the future, their savings, and when they might buy a house. With each question, Lily felt smaller and less adequate. That night, as they got ready for bed, Lily whispered to James, 2 weeks feels like forever. He pulled her close. It'll go by fast, I promise, and maybe you two will end up being friends. Lily nodded against his chest, not wanting to burst his bubble, but she knew better. There was no way Diane would ever see her as good enough for her perfect son. The next 13 days stretched ahead like an endless desert of judgment and criticism. Little did Lily know that in less than a week, her mother-in-law would tell her something in their kitchen that would change everything. 3 days into Diane's visit, Lily sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, trying to focus on her design project. The deadline was tomorrow, but concentration was impossible with Diane rearranging every cabinet and drawer in the kitchen. You know, Diane said, pulling out all the pots and pans, these should be organized by size, not thrown in randomly. The clatter of metal made Lily wince. I usually put the ones I use most in front, Lily explained without looking up from her screen. Diane made a small sound that somehow contained an entire lecture on proper housekeeping. And your spices should be alphabetized. It saves time when cooking. Lily bit her tongue. She had arranged her spices by how often she used them. Salt, pepper, and garlic powder were in front, while the rarely used nutmeg and cardamom were in the back. It made perfect sense to her. I'll keep that in mind, she replied, forcing a smile. James had left early that morning for a 3-day business trip. You two can bond, he had said cheerfully before kissing them both goodbye. Lily wanted to grab his collar and beg him not to leave her alone with his mother, but she had nodded and waved him off. Now she was trapped in kitchen hell as Diane continued her mission to improve everything. I'm making lunch, Diane announced at noon, washing her hands at the sink. Do you want a proper meal, or are you happy with that yogurt? Lily looked down at her half-eaten yogurt cup. This is fine, thanks. I have to finish this project. Work during meals isn't healthy, Diane said, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. James's father used to do that. Always working. I put a stop to that early in our marriage. There it was again. The perfect marriage that Lily and James should be copying. Diane never missed a chance to mention how she and her husband had done things the right way. I don't usually work during lunch, Lily said. Just today because of this deadline. Diane placed a plate in front of Lily 20 minutes later. Eat something proper. A growing girl needs nutrition. The sandwich looked perfect, cut into neat triangles with a small pile of potato chips and a pickle spear on the side. Despite her annoyance, Lily's stomach growled. Thank you, she said, genuinely surprised by the kind gesture. They ate in awkward silence until Diane spoke again. You work from home often? 3 days a week, Lily answered between bites. The company lets us choose our schedule. And James works long hours at the office. Sometimes, his job is demanding. Diane nodded slowly. I see you both very little. When do you have time for each other? The question hit Lily harder than expected. She and James had been so busy lately that quality time together had become rare. Date nights had been replaced by falling asleep in front of the TV. Conversations were mostly about schedules and bills. We manage, Lily said defensively. Of course you do, Diane replied, her tone suggesting the opposite. After lunch, Lily escaped to the guest room to finish her work. When she emerged hours later, the kitchen was spotless and completely reorganized. She couldn't find anything. The coffee cups were now in a cabinet across the room from the coffee maker. The frying pans were stacked by size, with her most used one at the bottom of the pile. I've made it much more efficient, Diane explained proudly. This is how my kitchen was set up for 30 years. Lily swallowed her frustration. It looks great, she lied. That night, they ate a meal Diane had prepared, a fancy chicken dish that took 3 hours and used every pot in the kitchen. As they ate, Diane asked more questions about their marriage. Do you and James want children soon? We're not ready yet, Lily replied carefully. Don't wait too long. It gets harder with age, you know. Lily nodded, pushing food around her plate. We're focused on our careers right now. Careers change, Diane said, sipping her wine. Family is forever. As Lily washed dishes after dinner, she counted the days until either James would return or she could politely excuse herself to a hotel. 11 more days felt like an eternity. She had no idea that in just a few more days, everything would change with a late-night conversation in this very kitchen. Lily's design project kept her at the office late. It was nearly midnight when she unlocked the apartment door, expecting to find the place dark and quiet. Instead, a soft light glowed from the kitchen. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and cautiously made her way toward the light. Diane sat at the kitchen table in a silk robe, a half-empty bottle of red wine in front of her. She looked up as Lily entered, her usually perfect hair slightly messy, her sharp eyes a bit unfocused. You're still up, Lily said, stating the obvious. Diane nodded, lifting her wine glass. Join me. Lily hesitated. Was this a trap? After a week of critiques and corrections, a midnight drink with her mother-in-law seemed risky, but the look on Diane's face was different tonight, softer, almost vulnerable. Sure, Lily said finally. Let me change first. 5 minutes later, Lily returned in sweatpants and an old t-shirt. Diane poured her a generous glass of wine. Long day? Diane asked, her voice gentler than Lily had ever heard it. Very. The client changed the design requirements at the last minute. Lily took a big sip of wine, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Men, Diane said with an unexpected laugh. Always moving the goalposts. Lily found herself smiling. Exactly. They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a few minutes. Lily watched Diane swirl the wine in her glass, staring at it like it contained answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. You know, Diane said suddenly, James thinks his father and I had the perfect marriage. Lily nodded. He talks about it sometimes, how you two were the gold standard. Diane laughed, but there was no humor in it. Gold-plated, maybe. Shiny on the outside, cheap underneath. She took another sip of wine. That's the problem with appearances. They're so easy to maintain from a distance. Lily sat very still, afraid that any movement might break whatever spell had loosened Diane's tongue. His father worked constantly, 60, 70 hours a week. Building his career, he said. Diane's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. I was alone most of the time. Raising James by myself, really, but we looked perfect in the Christmas cards. Lily didn't know what to say. The perfect couple James had described all these years sounded nothing like what Diane was describing. I see you and James doing the same thing, Diane continued. Working too much. Passing each other like ships in the night. That's why I came to visit. Not to criticize your housekeeping or your cooking. Oh, was all Lily could manage. He was having an affair, Diane said bluntly, for the last 5 years of our marriage, with his secretary. So cliché, right? She laughed again, that same hollow sound. I found out but said nothing. Kept up appearances. For James. For our social circle. For myself, maybe. I'm so sorry, Lily whispered. Don't be. I made my choices. Diane refilled both the glasses. But that's why I push. Why I pry. I don't want James to become his father. I don't want you to become me. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. James works a lot, Lily admitted. Sometimes I feel like we're just roommates. Diane nodded. It starts small, missing dinners, separate vacations because of work conflicts. Then one day you realize you haven't really talked in years. Lily felt tears prick her eyes. I thought it was just a phase, that things would slow down eventually. They don't, Diane said firmly. Not unless you make them. Take it from someone who waited too long. Lily looked at her mother-in-law with new eyes. The perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes weren't signs of superiority, they were armor. I don't want to lose what James and I have, Lily said. Then fight for it now, Diane replied, reaching across the table to cover Lily's hand with her own. Don't wait until you're my age, drinking wine alone in someone else's kitchen, full of regrets. The grandfather clock in the living room struck 1. The two women sat together, no longer adversaries but allies in the quiet kitchen, sharing truths that would change everything. James came home the next morning tired but smiling. He dropped his overnight bag by the door and hugged Lily tightly, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. I missed you, he said, kissing her forehead. I missed you too, Lily replied, meaning it more than usual. Where's Mom? Still sleeping. As if on cue, Diane entered the room. Her hair was back in its perfect style, her clothes wrinkle-free, no trace of last night's wine-drinking confidence visible, but when she caught Lily's eye, there was a new warmth there. A silent understanding passed between them. James, darling, Diane said, accepting his hug. How was your trip? Successful, but exhausting. They want me to go back next week for 3 days. Lily's heart sank. She had barely seen James all month. Again? She asked before she could stop herself. James shrugged. It's a big client. I don't really have a choice. Everyone has choices, Diane said mildly, pouring herself a cup of coffee. James looked at his mother with surprise. What do you mean? Just that work will always demand more if you let it. Your father was the same way. James smiled proudly. Well, Dad built a successful career that way. At what cost? Diane asked, stirring sugar into her coffee. Lily held her breath. This was dangerous territory. James frowned slightly. What are you talking about, Mom? Dad was great at balancing work and family. Diane caught Lily's eye again, then set her coffee down carefully. No, James, he wasn't. That's the story we told, but it wasn't true. Your father missed your 10th birthday for a business trip. He missed our 20th anniversary dinner because a client called. He was a brilliant businessman but a part-time husband and father at best. James stared at his mother, confusion clear on his face. But you always said. I know what I said, Diane interrupted gently. I wanted you to be proud of him. But now I see you following the same path, and I can't stay silent anymore. James looked between his mother and Lily. Is that what you think too? He asked Lily. Lily took a deep breath. I think we both work too much, and lately it feels like we're growing apart instead of together. James sat down heavily on a kitchen chair. I'm trying to build something for us, for our future. We need a present first, Lily said, placing her hand on his shoulder. Or there won't be a future worth building for. Your wife is smarter than I was at her age, Diane said, sitting across from her son. I waited too long to speak up. By the time I did, your father had already found someone who made him feel appreciated in ways I apparently didn't. James looked stunned. Dad cheated on you. That's not possible. For 5 years, Diane confirmed. With Margie, his assistant, the one with the red hair who always sent you birthday cards. The color drained from James's face. Why didn't you ever tell me? Pride, shame, fear. Diane reached for his hand. I thought keeping up appearances was what mattered. I was wrong. What matters is being honest with the people you love. Lily watched her husband process this information, his world view visibly shifting. I don't want to be like Dad, he finally said. You don't have to be, Lily told him. We can make different choices. Starting with this trip next week, Diane added, send someone else. Stay home with your wife. James looked at Lily with new eyes, as if really seeing her for the first time in months. I can train Rob to handle the client, he said slowly. He's been wanting more responsibility. Lily squeezed his hand. We could have a real weekend together. Maybe go to that bed and breakfast we've been talking about. The one on the coast? James asked, a genuine smile spreading across his face. I'd like that. Diane watched them, a bittersweet smile on her lips. This is what I came here hoping to see, she said softly. Later, as James called his office to arrange for Rob to take the trip, Lily helped Diane prepare lunch. Thank you, Lily whispered. For what? For telling the truth. For helping us see what was happening before it was too late. Diane squeezed Lily's arm. That's what family is supposed to do. And we are family now, aren't we? The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window as Lily sat sketching at the table. It had been 2 days since Diane's confession and James's promise to work less. The apartment felt different now, lighter somehow. Diane walked in wearing a casual outfit Lily had never seen before, jeans and a simple blouse instead of her usual perfectly pressed pants and designer tops. What are you drawing? Diane asked, peering over Lily's shoulder. Lily instinctively covered her sketchbook, then stopped herself. Just some silly doodles. Diane pulled out a chair and sat down. Those don't look silly to me. They look professional. Lily hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward her mother-in-law. The page showed a whimsical drawing of a little girl with a red umbrella walking through a forest of oversized mushrooms. I've always wanted to illustrate children's books, Lily admitted. My graphic design job pays the bills, but this is what I really love. Diane studied the drawing with genuine interest. These are wonderful, Lily. Have you shown them to publishers? Lily shook her head. I haven't shown anyone except my college roommate, not even James. Why not? It seems impractical. Children's book illustrators don't make much money. James and I have bills, and we're saving for a house. Lily closed the sketchbook. It's just a hobby. Do you know what I wanted to be? Diane asked. Lily shook her head. A writer. I used to write stories all the time. Poetry too. Diane smiled at the memory, but my parents said it wasn't a real career, so I got a business degree, met James's father, and became the perfect corporate wife instead. Do you still write? Lily asked. No. I put it away so long ago, I'm not sure I remember how. Diane's fingers traced the edge of Lily's sketchbook. That's my biggest regret, not even trying to follow my dream. They sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. I have an idea, Diane said suddenly. What if we worked on a children's book together? I could write a story, and you could illustrate it. Lily looked up in surprise. Really? Why not? I have 6 more days here. We could create something together. Diane's eyes sparkled with an excitement Lily had never seen before. But what about appearances? Diane waved her hand dismissively. I'm done with those. I want to try being real for a change, And the real Diane would love to write a children's story about a little girl with a red umbrella in a mushroom forest. Lily felt a smile spread across her face. I'd like that. Over the next 3 days, while James was at work, Lily and Diane created together. Diane wrote a story about a little girl named Ruby who discovered a magical world under her umbrella. Lily drew scenes of Ruby's adventures with talking mushrooms, singing raindrops, and dancing leaves. They worked at the kitchen table for hours, laughing and sharing ideas. Lily taught Diane how to use a drawing tablet, and Diane helped Lily refine the story's pacing. We make a good team, Diane said on the third afternoon as they reviewed their progress. We do, Lily agreed. I never would have expected this when you first arrived. Neither would I, Diane admitted. I came here thinking I needed to fix your marriage, but really I needed to fix myself first. James noticed the change in both of them. He commented on how his mother seemed more relaxed, how Lily seemed more confident. But he was so busy catching up at work after canceling his business trip that he didn't ask what they were working on. Should we tell him? Lily asked Diane as they put the finishing touches on their story. Not yet, Diane replied with a mischievous smile that made her look years younger. Let's finish it first. Make it perfect. Like a surprise? Exactly. A good surprise for a change. Little did they know that James would soon discover their project in the most unexpected way, leading to a confrontation none of them were prepared for. Their newfound alliance would face its first real test, and secrets much deeper than a children's book would come to light. The apartment was quiet except for the soft clicking of Lily's mouse as she added final touches to her illustrations. Diane had gone out to buy groceries for dinner. They planned to finish their book tonight and show it to James tomorrow. Everything was going perfectly. Until James came home early. Surprise, he called, walking into the kitchen with a bouquet of flowers. I finished the Henderson project ahead of schedule, so I thought. He stopped when he saw Lily frantically closing windows on her laptop. You're home early, Lily said, trying to sound casual. James set the flowers down. What are you working on? You look guilty. Nothing important, Lily said, but her voice betrayed her. James walked around the table and looked at her screen before she could close it completely. His eyes widened as he took in the colorful illustration of Ruby dancing with mushrooms, while Diane's story text flowed alongside it. What is this? He asked, scrolling through the pages. Did you draw these? And is that my mother's writing? Lily nodded, not sure why she felt so nervous. We've been working on it together. A children's book. It was going to be a surprise. James looked at the screen, then back at Lily. You've been doing this with my mother? For how long? About 4 days now, Lily admitted. Your mom used to want to be a writer, and I've always wanted to illustrate children's books, so we thought. You told my mother about your dream of illustrating books before you told me. James's voice was tight with hurt. I didn't plan to tell her. It just came up, Lily explained. James, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. James clicked through more pages of their project. My wife and my mother are working on some secret project together, something you never even mentioned wanting to do, and it's not a big deal. Lily stood up. Why are you so upset? I thought you'd be happy that your mom and I are getting along. Getting along? Last week you could barely stand each other, and now you're best friends with creative dreams together. James ran a hand through his hair. It feels like everyone's changing the rules without telling me. What rules? Lily asked, genuinely confused. The rules of who we are. James's voice rose. You're suddenly an aspiring children's book illustrator instead of a graphic designer. My mom is a writer instead of, well, my mom, what's next? The front door opened and Diane walked in carrying grocery bags. She stopped when she saw James standing by Lily's computer. James, you're home early. She looked between them, quickly reading the tension. You found our project. Yes, I found your project, James said coldly. Apparently everyone has secret dreams they share with each other, but not with me. Diane set the groceries down. James, don't be dramatic. It was meant to be a surprise for you. Like all the other surprises lately, James snapped. Like how you and Dad weren't actually the perfect couple you pretended to be, like how he was cheating on you, any other family secrets you've been keeping. Diane's face paled. She gripped the edge of the counter. James, please. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me my entire life? James's voice cracked. Do you know how many decisions I made based on what I thought you and Dad had? How I've tried to live up to this perfect image that wasn't even real. Lily touched James's arm. She was doing what she thought was best. James pulled away. And now you're taking her side? After knowing her for less than 2 weeks. There are no sides here, Diane said quietly. But there is one more thing you should know. She took a deep breath. Your father and I have been divorced for 5 years. The room went completely silent. What? James whispered. We decided to tell you we were still together. For holidays and family events, it was easier than admitting we failed. Diane's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. I'm sorry, James. James looked at his mother as if seeing a stranger. My whole life is a lie, he said, his voice hollow. Everything I believed about us, about family, it was all fake. He turned and walked out of the kitchen. A moment later, they heard the front door slam. Lily and Diane stood frozen in the suddenly silent apartment, the half-finished story of Ruby and her magical umbrella still glowing on the screen, now forgotten in the wake of real-life drama that had no easy resolution. 3 hours passed with no word from James. Lily called his phone repeatedly, but he didn't answer. Diane sat at the kitchen table, her face drawn with worry. I've ruined everything, she whispered. I should never have come here. Lily squeezed Diane's hand. He just needs time to process. It's a lot to take in. I kept the truth from him for so long. Too long. Diane looked up at Lily with tear-filled eyes. I thought I was protecting him, but I was just protecting myself. The sound of keys in the door made them both jump. James walked in, his face tired but calmer. He'd clearly been walking for hours, his hair wine-brown and cheeks flushed from the cold. James, Lily said, relief flooding her voice. We were so worried. He nodded, then looked at his mother. We need to talk. All of us. They gathered in the living room. James sat across from Diane and Lily, his hands clasped tightly together. I needed time to think, he began. To figure out what's real and what isn't. He looked at his mother. Why did you and Dad keep your divorce a secret from me? Diane took a deep breath. At first, it was because we didn't want to upset you. You were finishing your MBA, and we didn't want to distract you. She looked down at her hands. Then it became a habit. A lie we both maintained because it was easier than the truth. Your father didn't want to look like a failure. I didn't want people to know I'd been replaced. But I'm your son, James said, his voice breaking. Not some business associate you need to impress. I know, Diane whispered. I was wrong. So wrong. James turned to Lily. And you? Why didn't you ever tell me about wanting to illustrate children's books? Did you think I wouldn't support you? Lily considered her answer carefully. I think I was afraid of seeming frivolous. You work so hard, and you're so focused on our future. Saying I wanted to draw pictures for children's books seemed childish in comparison. Is that how you see me? As someone who would judge your dreams? The hurt in James's eyes was palpable. No, Lily said. I see you as someone who makes sacrifices for us. I didn't want to add to that burden. Silence fell over the room as James absorbed her words. I've been thinking about what kind of man I want to be, he finally said. For years I've tried to be like Dad, successful, respected, the perfect husband and provider. His voice grew stronger. But I don't want a marriage built on lies and secrets. I don't want to wake up in 20 years and find out my wife has dreams I knew nothing about, or that she's been unhappy all along. He leaned forward. Mom, I'm angry that you lied to me. But I understand why you did it, and I'm grateful that you finally told me the truth, even though it was hard. Diane nodded, tears streaming down her face. James turned to Lily. And I want to know everything about you, not just the practical parts, but your dreams too, even the ones that seem impossible. I want that too, Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. I have something to show you both, James said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, worn notebook and handed it to Lily. I found this while I was walking. Lily opened it to find sketches, rough but heartfelt drawings of landscapes, buildings, people. You draw? James smiled sheepishly. I wanted to be an architect once, before I switched to business because it seemed more sensible. These are beautiful, Diane said, looking over Lily's shoulder at the sketches. Maybe it's not too late, James said, for any of us. He looked at the laptop still open on the kitchen table, the children's book visible on the screen. Can I see what you two have been working on? Together they moved to the kitchen. Lily opened the file and began to scroll through their story, explaining their process as James watched with genuine interest. For the first time there were no masks, no pretenses, just 3 people sharing their real selves. I think it's wonderful, James said when they finished. Ruby and her magical umbrella. He smiled at his mother and wife. I never would have expected this from the two of you, but I'm glad it happened. Even the hard parts? Diane asked. Especially the hard parts, James replied. They were long overdue. As the evening went on, something new began to take shape in that small kitchen, not just a children's story, but a real family, built on truth instead of appearances.